guys, we're gonna have just a little update on the chassis of the Pontiac Superstocker, and what I want to talk about is masking. I know it seems like it's something that doesn't even need to be discussed, but I figure I'll just give you guys my process, and maybe some of these tips will help, or maybe you're already an expert and you don't need it, but this might be an interesting video anyway. So what I'm doing here is the Pontiac Superstocker has a cross brace on the body, and now that cross brace I'm going to make the same color as the frame of the car. Now you see here that I've already painted the frame, but as far as masking off these sections here which are molded into the floorboard, I want those to be blue where the rest of the floorboard stays silver. So this is my process. The first thing we do is I make sure I keep several different widths of masking tape. Tamiya is my favorite. There's all sorts of different brands out there. You can pick whichever you like. They range anywhere from 2mm all the way up to about 18mm, I think it is, this one. Now these help because you can get, here's a 2, here's a 3. You can cut the tape to all sorts of different sizes to mask off any area you want, and having different width tapes makes it a little easier to apply tapes in different areas so that you don't have to sit there cutting 100 different shapes every time you need to squeeze it into another small or large area. So first thing I like to do is I like to take the part that I'm masking, that I'm trying to separate, that's going to be a different color, and I mask around that. Then from there I spread out to the rest of the piece that I'm masking, so that I make sure that I got everything around the area that I want to paint sealed away from the rest of it. Now what this does is that it allows you to lay one base layer of tape around your part, which is going to be completely sealed off from everything else, and then you can spread out so that you can catch any little open areas as you're spreading out to cover the rest of the part that paint may sneak through. And believe me, it'll do it, because I kind of screwed this one up the first time I did it. So the first thing I do is I take out my spot here, and I'm just going to cut these pieces of tape. This is my 6mm, just to surround the parts that I want to paint. Now, a good tool to have is a pair of tweezers, as it's going to allow you to manipulate the paint and move the tape and move it around in areas where your big fat fingers won't fit. And you just want to bring it right up against the edge of the part you want. Now, always making sure that you've got it right up against that edge, because you don't want to have a layer of paint that extends just beyond the part you have. Now that can be a little tricky, because sometimes it can be a little hard to see how close you are to that edge. Then you're going to want to take, or what I do is I take a toothpick to burnish down the edge of the tape to make sure that it's totally sealed up against the part that I want to paint. So now I've got this one on both sides. Now we're going to go ahead and seal up right here. Right up against it. Now we're going to burn this off. Constantly burnishing over and over again, just to make sure around the part that the paint's not going to sneak through. I see here where this can go over just a hair more. And I'm constantly looking at the part to make sure that I'm not missing anything, because it's very easy while you're masking something to miss one section, and believe me, the paint will find its way through. So now we have that one isolated. Now we're going to work on the other part of this X-frame.
know this seems like it's a very, very easy and simple thing to do, but there is a bit of a technique to it. Now, this has a step up, and that's where it gets difficult with the masking, because the tape's not going to want to cooperate in the direction you want it to move. So for this, I'm going to go with a thinner
Okay guys, now to get around this area here, you can see that there's not much space here, and it's going to be a little bit too thin for my 6mm. So I'm going to grab my 3, which is half the size, or half the width, and I am going to use that to mask off that side.
Now, what I find works for me is to start off on the bottom of the step. As you can see, it steps up here. Now that's going to cause your tape to follow that step, and sometimes it's not going to want to follow it exactly where you want it to go. So we're going to pull this here. And you're going to just bring it right up against the part you want to paint. You're going to get to the step, and what you're going to want to do is make sure you burnish down the lower part of the step, because the tape is going to want to move on you. Once you have it anchored securely, then you can kind of convince it to do what you want it to do. And when you get to the first part of that step up, you're going to want to burnish there. You got to do this in steps. Excuse the pun. Because you don't want the tape to move out of the position you're looking for. Now, when you're going over contoured shapes like this is when burnishing the tape down becomes very critical. As any little gap in the tape when it's moving over an unusual shape will allow paint to seep in. Okay, now we don't need the 3mm anymore. We'll go back to the 6 to finish off separating that part. And there we go, right? We're separated there. Now, there is a small lip here where this X-frame doesn't reach the edge of the part. So you always got to remember to look out for small bits and pieces like that. And there you go, guys. The hard part is over. We now have all of our X-frame parts separated from the rest of the piece that we're painting. And now it's all going to come down to just filling in the rest of the part with the tape. And this is where your larger pieces of tape come in handy. And like I said before, sometimes you'll have little gaps in your tape when you're sealing it up. And for that, you can use the smaller pieces to fill it in so you don't risk running over the parts you actually want to paint and sealing them off. And multiple small pieces of tape are better than large pieces of tape. It takes a little longer to mask off with multiple small pieces, but it allows you to get into all of the areas that you want to mask off without risk of missing a spot. Obviously, if you're painting something large, that's large wide open areas, yes, large pieces of tape will work quickly, more efficiently. But when I'm going into a small area like this little area here, and there's a spot here that I can see that I missed, multiple small pieces with multiple different sizes of tape allow you to work around every instance you might have of area to cover. And there we go, guys. Oh, see this? Almost missed that. Now that would have been really annoying if I had gotten paint into that transmission tunnel. There we go. Now we just take our large piece of tape and we're going to mask off the front of it. And we're just going to cover this off to prevent any overspray from getting on the subframe, which we want to remain black. See that one large piece. Every once in a while the large pieces do come in handy. But it's much easier to control the tape when you use smaller pieces than just using a large piece to cover everything. And control of the masking tape is what you want. That's what's very important. When you're airbrushing, you have much more control of the spray pattern on your tape. On your paint. So you can get away without masking everything. But this is just for this case of this tutorial. I just wanted to show you guys what the entire piece looks masked off except for the part we want to paint. See, once you're done, you're going to look for gaps in your paint, in your tape. And you're going to want to burnish down those gaps so that the paint doesn't get through it. Now, another very important thing is when you're painting, you're going to want to lay down a thin layer of paint. Let that dry for about 5 minutes just so that it seals the tape around the part you want to paint. Then you're going to want to layer the rest of your color coats. So that's pretty much it, guys, for this masking lesson. We'll be back with the unmasking as soon as I get the paint down.
Nice and confusing then. Maybe the best place to start would just be to have a look at what they do, and we can worry about what to call them at the end. So let's take the chainmail on this model as an example. I've base coated it with a
Alright guys, and here we go. This is the result of our masking technique. Now, it worked out perfectly this time, and if you do it step by step, then you should have pretty good results with it. But every once in a while you will get some that screws up, because when I masked off these the frame rails, I did get a bunch of blue overspray that hit here because I was in a rush. I really wanted to see it done, and I guess that's the final lesson with masking. Take your time. Patience is a virtue, as Mrs. Onyx Fiero always says. And you should get pretty good results just like this. I'm very happy with this. Now we're going to set that aside. And, oh, just in case you're curious, the paint that I used was decanted Tamiya Pure Blue, which was the perfect color for this particular project. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this little tutorial. Come on back for the rest of the build. This is part of the Mr. Mo's build, which is going to take a little bit of a turn and become something a little more. And that's something we're going to talk about on the next episode of the Mr. Mo's appreciation build. Alright guys, I'll see you on the next one.